I am Mark Donegan, host of the Marketing Execution Podcast. Well, first, I want to address how founders often assume content creation requires endless drafting, when actually a three-part method turns raw expertise into profit fast. And next, it's a common problem that tech teams struggle to communicate complex products, but my experience scaling enterprise companies taught me that rigid structures are what win buyer attention. Now, here is the conversation Tim and I had about building these exact systems.
Tune in, listen up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, growing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
I touched the nerve on Twitter this morning, Mark.
Oh, really? What did you say?
I just pointed out that the smartest technical founders we know are usually the worst writers.
You are trying to get canceled today, but you're not wrong.
It's a tragedy, though. You have these brilliant engineers building incredible SaaS products, but when they try to explain it, it's a wall of text. It's dense, it's boring.
It is the classic curse of knowledge. They know too much.
Exactly. So I stumbled across this concept called the 3x3 method. It claims to fix this specific problem. Have you seen this?
Have I seen it? Tim, this is literally the secret weapon of the best ghostwriters in the game.
Really?
Absolutely. I know a guy who runs a massive newsletter. He uses this exact framework for every single post. It turns a chaotic brain dump into viral gold.
Okay, so walk me through it, because most founders think framework means a complex diagram.
Now, simplicity is the whole point. The human brain loves the number 3. It's distinct, it's memorable.
Right.
So the 3x3 method splits your content into two main buckets, the how and the why.
That sounds pretty standard.
But here's the trick. Most people just write the how. They give you a list of instructions and leave.
Guilty.
The 3x3 forces you to go deeper. You need 3 steps for the how, and you need 3 sub-reasons for the why.
Okay, let's break that down. Start with the how.
So imagine you're explaining a new feature. You don't just create a bulleted list. You break the execution into 3 distinct steps.
Okay.
But you can't just describe the step. You have to add value to it. For step 1, you explain the action, but you immediately pair it with a tip, a specific actionable tip.
I like that.
Then for step 2, you explain the action, but you warn them about a mistake. You say, do this, but watch out for that.
That's huge, because that's where the expertise actually lives.
Exactly. Any intern can copy-paste the manual. An expert tells you where the landmines are.
And step 3?
Step 3 is the action plus an example. You ground it in reality. So suddenly, your how-to guide isn't dry anymore. It's helpful, protective, and practical.
That creates a lot of trust right off the bat.
It does. But Tim, that's only half the battle.
Because we still have the why bucket.
Right. And honestly, on the Marketing Execution Podcast, we talk about positioning all the time. The why is your positioning.
How so?
The how teaches them to execute. The why teaches them how to think.
That is a great distinction.
You need to give them 3 sub-reasons why this framework matters. Reason 1 helps them frame the problem mentally.
Okay.
Reason 2 usually attacks the alternative. It explains why the old way of doing things fails.
Like blaming an external enemy?
You nailed it. You blame the old system. You blame the complexity. It generates buy-in. And then reason 3 seals the deal with the ultimate benefit.
It sounds like you are structuring a sales pitch, not just a blog post.
Everything is a sales pitch, Tim. If you're a founder writing an internal memo to your team, you're selling them on a new process.
That is true.
I tried helping this one technical founder a few years ago. He was building this incredibly complex cloud infrastructure tool.
I can imagine the jargon.
Oh, it was impossible. He would write these 2,000-word updates for his investors, and nobody opened them.
Painful.
I told him, dude, stop. Use the 3x3. Tell them the 3 things they need to know about the product update, then tell them the 3 reasons why this changes the market.
What happened?
The answer was instant. Investors started replying. They started asking things that were useful to the project because they finally understood what he was building.
It's funny. It sounds simplistic, but it actually requires you to understand your own business better.
That is the hidden benefit. If you can't break your idea down into 3 steps and 3 reasons,
Then you don't actually understand it well enough.
precisely. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That's not just a quote poster, it's an operating system.
You know, I was looking at the source material for this method, and it mentioned something interesting about AI.
Oh yeah?
It says this framework is actually the perfect prompt for an AI copywriter.
That makes total sense.
Because AI tends to ramble, right? It hallucinates. But if you give it constraints,
If you tell the AI, give me step 1 plus a tip, step 2 plus a mistake, you're forcing quality.
you're guiding the output.
I actually tried this last week. I took a messy transcript from a meeting and told the AI, rewrite this using the 3x3.
And
It was terrifyingly good. It sounded like an expert wrote it because the structure does the heavy lifting.
so, for the founders listening, this isn't just about becoming a better writer personally. It is about scaling your communication.
100%. You can turn your expertise into profit or into influence just by organizing your thoughts.
The why part really sticks with me, though. I feel like we see so much how-to content today.
It is a commodity.
Right. If I search how to configure a database, I get a million results.
But if you write why the standard database configuration is costing you money,
Now I'm clicking.
now you are an authority. You stopped being a technician and became a consultant. That is the power of the second 3 in the framework.
It really aligns with that idea of founders needing to be chief evangelists.
You have to be. If you cannot articulate the reason why, nobody cares about the how.
Mark, this is actionable gold, but it makes me wonder about the next step. Once you have the content written,
Yeah?
you still need people to actually see it.
The distribution problem.
Exactly. So if a founder masters this 3x3 writing style, how should they actually push this out on a platform like LinkedIn versus a blog?
You are overthinking the platform.
Am I?
The platform is just a bucket. The 3x3 method is the water.
Okay, explain that metaphor.
Think about it. The framework is modular. You have 3 distinct steps and 3 distinct sub-reasons. If you're writing a blog post, you use the whole stack. You give them the full meal.
Right.
But on LinkedIn, you just pull out one vertical slice. You post the 3 mistakes you're making with your database. That is just step 2 of the framework. Or you post a Twitter thread that is just the 3 reasons your old workflow is failing.
So you're essentially creating a content library by accident.
Exactly. You write one core piece of deep thinking, and it feeds your social channels for a week. It separates the thinking from the distribution.
That solves a volume problem for sure.
It does.
But I want to go back to something you said earlier about using this framework as an AI prompt.
Yes, that way you can turn your expertise into profit.
That is a bold claim for a writing template.
It's not just a template, it's a psychological trigger. The source material has this fascinating instruction in the prompt. It says you should write for a 13-year-old.
13? We're talking to enterprise CTOs here.
It doesn't matter. In fact, that's why it's critical, because complexity is a place where liars hide. If you can't explain your product to a middle schooler, you don't understand your product. You're just reciting jargon.
So the constraint exposes the imposter.
It exposes the imposters and it elevates the masters. When a founder breaks down a complex SaaS architecture into 3 simple steps, that signals massive authority.
Shows you have total command of the subject.
Precisely. You stop looking like a technician trying to impress people. You start looking like a teacher helping people.
That's a huge shift in positioning.
It's the ghost writer mindset. Whether you use AI or write it yourself, you're adopting a persona. The prompt in the framework actually tells you to enter a state of flow.
I saw that. It had a pretty colorful description of that state.
It did. It basically said to write like you're on Performance Enhancer.
Right.
But the point is valid. You need to write with momentum. The 3x3 structure gives you that momentum because you always know what comes next. You never get stuck.
It removes the cognitive load.
And there's one other key element in the why bucket, the concept of the external enemy.
Oh, I remember seeing that in the intro template.
Yeah,
Blame an external enemy.
this is crucial for founders. Usually, when a customer has a problem, they feel stupid.
Nobody likes feeling stupid.
Exactly. If your software is hard to use, they think it's their fault. But the 3x3 intro flips the script. It tells the reader, hey, it's not your fault.
You absolve them.
You blame the system. You blame the old way, the complexity of the market.
So you and the reader are suddenly on the same team.
That builds loyalty faster than any featureless ever could. So when you ask, why does this matter? It matters because it forces you to be clear, empathetic, and authoritative, all at the same time. And it does it efficiently. It respects the reader's time, and in the current attention economy, that is the ultimate sign of respect.
Fits perfectly with what we always tell founders. Be a guide, not a hero.
Exactly. The framework is your MEP.
Okay, I'm sold on the philosophy. I see why it builds trust, and I see why it works for the writer's confidence. But if I'm a founder sitting here with a blank document, what is the literal first step to filling out this grid?
That is the best question you have asked all day.
I try my best.
Most founders stare at the blank page and try to write the headline first. You're going to be stuck there for hours waiting for the perfect headline to land in your lap.
But it feels logical to start at the top.
It is logical, but it's wrong. If you want to use this grid effectively, you start in the middle.
The middle.
You start with the how. You write down the 3 steps.
Okay.
Let's make this real. Imagine you are a founder of a cloud cost optimization platform.
Okay, I'm saving companies money on AWS.
Right. Do not worry about a catchy title yet. Just tell me the 3 literal things a user must do to fix their bill.
Okay, step 1 would be to audit their idle instances.
Good. Write that down. What is step 2?
Step 2 is to right-size the databases.
Excellent. And step 3?
Step 3 is setting up auto-scaling limits so it does not happen again.
Boom. You just wrote the core of your article. That took you 10 seconds.
And it was surprisingly painless.
That's the how section of the 3x3 grid. Now we move to the why.
This is the implementation of the lesson.
No, this is the conviction. For every step you just wrote, you need a sub-reason. Why does step 1 matter?
Well, auditing idle instances matters because you're paying for servers you're not using.
Exactly. That's your sub-reason. Now do step 2. Why right-size the database?
Because over-provisioning storage is the silent killer of most budgets.
See how fast this is moving?
I see it. I'm just filling in boxes. I'm not writing.
You're barely writing at all. You're structuring. You fill in the how boxes, then you fill in the why box.
So the grid is basically full now.
Almost. Now you go back to the top. Now you write the intro.
Why do we save the intro for last?
Because now you know exactly what you're promising. And this is where we use that external enemy tactic we talked about.
Pride, blame the system.
So your intro follows the template from the source material. Section 1 is the common question.
Why is my AWS bill so high?
Perfect. Section 2 is the external enemy.
Because the cloud providers make their pricing models intentionally confusing.
Yes, you're absolving the customer. It's not their fault they're broke, it's the system's fault.
I like that.
And section 3 is a simple solution.
But luckily, you can fix it with this simple 3-step audit.
And just like that, you have a complete piece of thought leadership. That took us maybe 2 minutes. And here is the kicker, Tim. This works for software docs too.
It does?
Think about onboarding emails. Think about API documentation.
Go on.
Instead of dumping a manual on a developer, give them the 3x3. Here's how to authenticate. Here is how to query. Here is how to parse.
It forces the product team to simplify the user path.
Correct. If your product team cannot fit the onboarding into 3 steps, you don't have a documentation problem. You have a product problem.
That is a harsh truth.
Practicality is harsh. But let's talk about the final accelerant.
The AI part?
The AI part. You don't even have to write the sentences yourself anymore.
You just feed the grid to the bot?
Precisely. You take that grid we just made about cloud costs, you paste it into ChatGPT or Claude.
What's the prompt?
You say, act as an expert copywriter. Use this 3x3 framework. Here are my 3 steps and my 3 reasons. Write this for a 13-year-old.
Just like the Zor said.
The output will be 90% done. You just tweak the tone and hit publish.
That is incredibly efficient,
It turns a founder from a writer into an editor.
which is a much easier role to play.
It's scalable. You can do this once a day. You can build a massive library of content without ever suffering from writer's block.
You're systematizing influence.
That's the game, Tim. The best product doesn't always win. The product that's best understood wins.
And this framework ensures you're understood.
It guarantees it because you're respecting the biology of the human brain. We like things in threes. We like simple steps. We like knowing why.
It really is a masterclass in communication.
It is.
Reflectively, Mark, we've covered the psychology, the structure, and now the execution. Can you pull this all together and give us the final summary?
Here is the bottom line. Stop trying to be a writer and start being an architect. You take your expertise and you force it into the grid.
The 3x3.
Exactly. You define the what. You break the how into 3 actionable steps that a 13-year-old could follow. You back it up with 3 sub-reasons for the why.
Simple.
It has to be. You wrap it in an intro that blames an external enemy, side, so your reader feels understood, not judged. Then you hand that structured thinking to an AI and let it generate the prose. You are not writing words anymore. You represent authority. That is how you turn a messy brain dump into a profit engine.
Mark, that is a complete shift in mindset. But we have to wrap this up. If a founder takes only one thing away from this whole series, what is it?
It is this. The market does not pay you for your complexity. They pay you for your clarity.
Wow.
If they cannot understand your framework, they will never buy your product. So use the grid, simplify the steps, and make it impossible for them to say no. The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.